Hi, friends. Today we're going to talk about one of the most iconic battles in all of 40k, the Siege of Vraks. This was a 17-year-long siege on the planet of, you guessed it, Vraks. It includes iconic combatants like the Kriegers, Dark Angels, Alpha Legion, and other fan-favorite factions. Now, the Siege of Vraks is special to us because of how relatively unspecial it is in lore. It's really cool how we got such an in-depth breakdown of a relatively mundane battle in the 40k world. And this crazy battle was not some huge system-wide war like most other 40k battles we get coverage of. It was just a silly clash for a single city. And this really capitalizes how deadly the universe is when a battle like this is just another Tuesday. Vrax is a barren storage shed of a planet, and as an armory world, it houses a ton of weapons and supplies. Additionally, it is part of a significant Imperial supply line. If it were to be lost in more important war zones like pre-Falcadia, would likely be short on supplies. And so, much like Mordecai's love life, trouble started with the Cardinal. Okay, interjection. Apparently, Margaret is a Robin, not a Cardinal. But, take a look at her and tell me she doesn't look like a Cardinal. She literally looks nothing like a Red Robin. Whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm talking about the religious Cardinal, anyways, not the Bird Cardinal. But, back to the regular 40k content. Trouble on Brax began with the Cardinal by the name of Zaphan. But Mr. Fan wasn't always a little troublemaker. He was once a righteous, emperor loving, violence dealing holy man. On Vrax, people were losing faith in the Emperor, and the threat of mass heresy grew like crazy. So, as a man of the Lord, I mean a man of the Emperor, Cardinal Zaphan began a great awakening approximately 40,000 years after the last one. Alright, please the American history crowd with a shoddy reference? Check. Much like the men of America's various great awakenings, Zaphan went around giving impassioned sermons and reinvigorating religious fervor throughout the world. Unlike the men of America's various great awakenings, Mr. Cardinal Zaphan went a bit ham, and by a bit ham, I mean violently purged anyone who spoke out against him. Although Zaphan was proving to be an overall net positive in terms of imperial faith, his success was getting a bit to his head, and he started to believe that he was a mouthpiece for the emperor himself, and with a little of encouragement from his advisor, Deacon Mammon, Zaphan became even more aggressively religious. This worried the Ordo Hereticus as the cardinal was becoming too beloved and too powerful. In addition, Zaphan really appealed to the poor working class of Vrax. And if you ever worked a minimum wage restaurant job, you could probably just imagine the horrors downtrodden, mistreated workers could unleash if instilled with even just one nicety. So just imagine the potential havoc brought on by the insane religious fervor mixed with the downtrodden, mistreated workers of 40k, who probably have it like at least 5% worse than the average customer service worker. So, to prevent Zaphan from starting a full on class war and general unrest, the Ordo Hereticus started a full on class war and general unrest by sending a Vindicare assassin to live up to its name and carefully assassinate the Cardinal. Unfortunately for the Ordo Hereticus and general peace and quiet, the Vindicare assassin made a Vindicare ass of himself when his assassination attempt was thwarted. Zaphan was saved by a combination of his Rosarius energy field and bodyguards. Zaphan declared the attempt on his life to be the work of heretical traitors! And the Vrax PDF was devoted to Zaphan and eliminated the Vraxian Sisters of Battle and Arbites. With the actual loyalists dead and gone, Zaphan declared himself supreme ruler of Vrax and a bastion of the loyal Emperor lovers. Hearing of the heresy in Vrax, the Imperials assembled a strike force to reclaim the planet, headed by I'm not gonna get that one right, Lord Zulki. Since Vrax was a formidable armory world, Zaphan's relatively small force would be well armed and ready for a long war of attrition. Attrition? Did I hear attrition? Oh my god! Attrition is the Death Korps of Krieg's middle name. Being masters of siege tactics and attrition warfare, the Kriegers were well suited for the upcoming Siege of Vrax. Zaphan and Mammon prepared their defenses, and the Besties amassed an army of guardsmen, PDF, and zealous militias to protect their fortress citadel. It was about to be a real scrap. No, wrong. Orcs are not in this video. You can leave, Green Man. I spit on you. But back to the Loyalists. The Loyalist plan was to divide their forces into two groups so they could assault the heretics from two sides and divide Zaphan's smaller force into even smaller forces. And the Imperials planned for a 12-year siege in which their overwhelming forces would eventually overwhelm the enemy forces. And so the Kriegers landed and kicked off the party with a huge artillery bombardment on Zaffan's outer defensive lines. After days of shaking the earth with their earth shakers, the Krieg launched a mass infantry assault of 500,000 men. They took extreme casualties in no man's land, but they eventually broke through and captured some trench lines. Hundreds of thousands of men spent to capture some border trenches. Sounds like a total imperial victory to me, baby. I bet this siege will be over in no time. So, after about a year and a half of brutal fighting, the first real battle was to begin. The Loyalists sent a task force of Lehman Russes, Bane Blades, and Krieg Grenadiers. Woo! Krieg Kazarkin, let's go! Whoa! To take the fort creatively named Fort A453. And so, after some more Death Corps became Death Corps, they made a breakthrough and they took the fort. Capitalizing on their advantage, they sent Death Riders to hunt down the retreating enemy forces. This was the first major Imperial dub of the siege. After the Kriegsmen took Fort A453 in the west line, the heretics in the north fell back. The Imperials in the north began to move through the pass closer to the central fortress. As the Loyalists moved through, they were met with a large traitor counterattack. After years of being on the offensive, the Kriegers were not prepared for a huge Vraxian counterattack. The initial attack was warded off, but the Kriegs were left ragged, and the next morning they were attacked again, and the northern sector was mostly reclaimed by the traitors. This would prove a critical setback for the Imperials, and many of Lord Zoolander's plans would make like a Minecraft YouTuber and get cancelled. The ultra zealous, utterly selfless soldiers would charge into the enemy lines, get shredded en masse, and then gain some ground. And then the ultra zealous, utterly selfless soldiers would charge into the enemy lines, get shredded en masse, and then gain some ground. Then the ultra zealous, utterly selfless. So for 7 years, the two armies were at a near stalemate with thousands of soldiers dying every day. So to make the siege a bit more interesting, the Alpha Legion decided to squad up and hop into the battle. Being the Alpha Legion, they secretly snuck onto the planet to lead a surprise assault. The Alpha Legion forces were headed by Warlord Alfarius. Arrakos. Alfarius? Well, I don't really know. But Lord Zaffan decided the best way to enact the Emperor's will was to go against the Emperor's will and team up with Chaos. This is some Magnus level of wrongness. In response to the Alpha Legion and newfound Chaos presence on Vraks, Lord Xanax called for Imperial reinforcements. Surprisingly, the Dark Angels were the first to respond. Usually, the Dark Angels are a lot like myself. That's to say, they don't go outside unless they're forced to. But for whatever reason, they came to Vraks with unusual gusto. Half of the entire Dark Angels chapter was personally led by Supreme Grandmaster Azrael, and they made a booming entrance. Literally, they orbitally bombarded the planet and flew down in Thunderhawks. They couldn't land at the main Traitor Citadel since it was too heavily defended, but that's okay because they didn't want to. The Dark Angels just had one objective: get bitches. No, wait, that can't be right. Oh, get the starport. The Angels didn't say a single word to their allies. They blew up a bunch of stuff, killed a crapload of heretics minutes upon arrival, and then they assaulted the starport. Everything was going great for the green dudes, until the blue-green dudes arrived. The Alpha Legion ambushed the Angels, and Arcos personally engaged Azrael in a epic Space Marine duel. Woo! Both Marine leaders traded blows and were heavily wounded. Arcos got the upper hand, but Azrael was saved by his Deathwing Terminators. Both Marine forces fell back, but as the Dark Angels retreated, they were able to blow up the starport on their way out, and then they abandoned the whole entire siege. Oh yay, thank the Emperor! His Dark Angels have arrived to help us! Greetings, Space Marine, how you do? Give me my spaceport! You're welcome. I have saved you, guardsmen. Alright, bye now. What? With the Angels gone, Lord Ukulele sent his men to do the tried and true mass charge with artillery bombardments. Although the Kriegers were constantly taking heavy losses, they were also inflicting heavy losses, and the traitor forces were beginning to wear down. So, after almost a decade of deadly fighting, the Imperials were starting to become confident in their victory. However, Arcos had called for some of his pally pals to join in on the party, and a bunch of Chaos Marines made their way to the surface of Vraks. Khorne Berserkers assaulted the Krieg's flank. The Krieg were on the verge of securing a critical location and assaulting the traitor fortress, but they were attacked from all sides and they were forced to fall back. The Circlers became the Circlees. The Imperials were now facing Plague Marines, Iron Warriors, Black Legionnaires, World Eaters, and an assortment of freaks and weirdos. Of those freaks and weirdos were Chaos Titans. Things were about to get titanically nuts for our gas mask boys. And now the slow crawl, the front-on trench battle became a chaotic scuffle. Zaffan was cucked by the Chaos forces, and he was demoted from self-proclaimed Jesus to self-proclaimed Jesus who no longer leads an army. Berserkers went berserk, Alpha Legionnaires alphaed all around, and the Death Guard made farts so potent they could get through the Kriegers' gas masks. The Imperials desperately fought to survive as they waited for reinforcements. After weeks of getting their gas mask kick in, Marshal Kagori came to their rescue with even more Kriegers and even some Titans. Luckily or unluckily for the Imperials, depending on how you frame it, they got their asses kicked so hard that many of the Chaos Warlords figured that they already won and they left the system before Kagori even arrived. Kagori took command of the Imperials and was more aggressive than Zolki, and he wanted to end the siege once and for all. He led a huge assault creatively named the Kagori Offensive. The huge amount of guardsmen and overwhelming firepower of the Titans turned the tide of the battle, and the Imperials once again gained the upper hand. Another fun tactic Kagori pulled was sending Krieg engineers to tunnel beneath enemy lines and hit them from the back. The tunnels became one of the bloodiest war fronts in the siege, and Kriegers and Berserkers got a bit silly in the darkness. Squirm, squirm, I am a worm. Holy Emperor, that's brilliant! Wow! Along with fighting berserkers, the engineers rigged the tunnels with demo charges and blasted a breach in the traitor defensive lines. The loyalists pushed forward yet again. However, the traitors were able to defend the breach with the use of heretic ogrins. Kagori was making some progress, of course, at the cost of tons of lives. However, his progress was not fast enough, and the previous 12-year estimate had already passed. The Administratum got bored of the war since it had dragged on for so long with absolutely no Family Guy clips, so they withdrew a lot of Kagori's forces, which would cause the Imperials to once again lose momentum. Kagori called for Marine support, and the Red Scorpions heeded the call. The Scorpions only deployed 5 assault Marines into the breach. But this wasn't the all-too-common case of Astartes hubris and bad writing. No, there were only 5 Marines because their mission wasn't to fight the Horde. It was to deploy a teleport Homer. The Homer sparked to life, and assault Terminators materialized into the fray. The Terminators carved the traitor forces from within, while Kriegers and Marine reinforcements attacked them from the front. Once the Imperials had broken through the breach, the Scorpions ended their cameo and withdrew from their plan to recover from the heavy losses that they had endured. The Loyalists had finally secured the breach and were able to begin their final push on the traitor citadel. Things were looking up Millhouse. But, surprise, surprise, things were not up, and the Ordo Malleus foresaw an apocalyptic demon incursion on Vraks that would turn it into a demon world. After some contention with the Ordo Hereticus, the Ordo Malleus sent Mega Chad Lord Inquisitor Hector Rex to Vraks in order to prevent this grim outcome. The Guardsmen gave Inquisitor Rex control of the siege and prepared to finish the fight. Also, quick aside, Hector Rex is an absolute total beast. He's an insanely strong psyker, he's arguably physically stronger than the average Marine, and he's one of the few people to have ever witnessed the Emperor in person. Crazy. But alongside Rex, the Ordo Malleus also requisitioned Grey Knight support. So, with the combined might of the Kriegers, Grey Knights, Red Hunter Marines, and Inquisitorial armies, the Imperials prepared their final assault. Lord Rex planned to create a perimeter around the citadel and close in on the traitor forces, taking it through brute force. At first, it was going well, but the Death Guard forces stopped the Kriegers in their tracks. For like the millionth time, there was a stalemate. Then, someone had the brilliant, giga-brained idea to use chemical weapons. Yeah, chemical weapons against the dudes known for being resilient, stinky, miasma-loving little dudes. Great plan! Not! As anyone probably expected, the chemical weapons did almost nothing, if not nothing, to the Plague Marines, and it just made it even harder for the Kriegers to do their job. However, luckily for the Imperials, the Chaos Forces were getting a bit antsy-pantsy and running out of yummy foods to fill their chaotic bellies with. So, Skulltaker Zufar led a coup and claimed control of the Vraks in defense. The first order of business was killing Zaphan's most loyal followers, and then locking Zaphan in a dungeon. On the Imperial end of things, Inquisitor Rex planned to assault Hangman's Hill in order to move in closer to the Citadel and disable its orbital defense lasers. After 3 assaults, the Imperials finally secured the hill, and things were once again looking up Millhouse. But, surprise, surprise, things were going to get complicated once more. The Ordo Hereticus was still mad at Malleus for not going through with the proper procedures, so they had a little fit to the High Lords of Terra. In turn, the High Lords withdrew many regiments from Rex's siege force. But Rex did not falter, and he prepared his final assault on the Citadel. As usual, they started with an artillery barrage and sent an initial vehicle assault. The initial assault had high casualties per usual, but it was enough to take down the Citadel's void shield. The Kriegers began to move into the Citadel and faced a surprisingly weak enemy defense. However, it was a trap, and the heretic forces ambushed the Kriegers. Things were also looking bad for the forces trying to capture a strategically important ravine around the Citadel. Luckily, Rex realized that ravine rhymes with marine, and he called in a Red Hunter Marine assault. The Marines shot drop pods from orbit into the ravine. But again, it was a trap, and the Chaos Forces massacred the Red Hunters on arrival. The Imperials did eventually take the ravine, but they suffered more casualties than originally planned. Which honestly, suffering more casualties than originally planned can be the slogan for this entire siege. But finally, once again, the Imperial forces moved in on the city and faced heavy resistance taking the walls. They faced Marines, cultists, and demon engines. Eventually, Inquisitor Rex personally led a Grey Knight strike force, and he finally claimed the lower gate for realsies this time. The Red Scorpions had also rejoined the battle and assaulted a different gate. They temporarily claimed the gate, but the sanctified Chaos Marines were able to successfully open a warp rift, and an army of demons reinforced the traitor forces. The Scorpions were suddenly on the defensive, but they were able to hold their ground. Team Rex also did well against the incursion, as demon hunting was the Grey Knight's middle name. So to up the ante, the mighty bloodthirster Angrath joined the fray. Angry Wrath, not to be mistaken by the other giant angry red demon, Angry Ron, tore through the Grey Knights and engaged Rex in an epic duel. Woo! Somehow, after an epic duel, woo! The absolute madman, Lord Inquisitor Rex, bested the greater demon in glorious melee combat and banished it back to the warp. Victory was in sight, and the Dark Angels returned to secretly finish their mission. The Angels of Absolution assaulted the Citadel and captured Arcos. Then, they once again fucked off to defend their title of World's Worst Teammates. But the Imperials had all but won at this point, and Rex led the Kriegers, Red Scorpions, and Grey Knights in a final purge of the Citadel. They found the once powerful Cardinal Zaffan, who was now a pathetic loser guy Chaos Spawn, and they mercy killed him. Sufer's Chaos forces left the party early through their warp rift, but they did leave a parting gift. And by gift, I mean a demon prince. But the Grey Knights took a final fight for the road and banished the prince, sealed the rift, and finally claimed the Citadel once and for all. So after 17 years, the Imperials had finally finished the Siege of Vraks. Millions of guardsmen died, hundreds of Marines, and a bunch of Titans were lost to claim the world. And it was mostly in vain anyways, as the planet was almost completely wrecked after the siege. In current times, Vrax is basically just a useless wasteland with its once vast weapon stores completely exhausted during the siege. But sometimes, no, actually oftentimes in 40k, it isn't about making sense, it's about kicking ass and inspiring people. Inspiring people to buy kick-ass models, that is, because I just read the super epic thing and now I want to paint some minis. And keep in mind, even though this is probably my longest lore video, it is a very condensed version of the Siege of Vraks. I'd highly recommend reading the Imperial Armor books that Vraks is in. It's cool because it's like written like a historical record of an actual battle in universe. You'll get to see some cool maps, read about some more details, and learn about the participants some more. But yeah, that's the Siege of Vraks. Pretty epic stuff. It's funny how a lot of people view this as one of the craziest 40k battles when the point of the story is kind of just, oh yeah, this is what the typical battle might look like. The Demon Incursion kind of spiced things up, but really this is just another Tuesday for the Warhammer 40,000s. So thank you everybody for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to all the epic patrons who help the channel immensely. And as always, please like, comment, subscribe, and consider sharing to all your overly zealous friends with little to no self-preservation. Thanks. Alright, trying to counter the Plague Marines with bioweapons is probably the stupidest thing ever. Like, I've heard fighting fire with fire, but this strategy stinks.